You are listening to the cycling podcast at the Tour de France, brought to you by iWoka, flexible loans built for small businesses. iWoka.co.uk. Today we're in La Roche-sur-Foron.
Where are we, Lionel?
We are in La Roche-sur-Foron, outside a Korean restaurant where we're having a post-stage beer.
Not quite the same as last night, is it? The setting?
Not quite, no. I don't want to be disrespectful, but last night was an all-category hotel and meal, wasn't it?
Wow.
It was still sensational.
Yeah. How do you follow that? Lionel Daniel. Orla, Rose, François, were you impressed?
Oh yeah, it was. I've eaten in some 2-star, 3-star Michelin restaurants before. They're always absolutely exceptional. This was one of those exceptional culinary moments where you're in another dimension. Like these guys are, top GC riders. I mean, this morning the chef asked me if I liked it, and and I said yes. And but I told him it's not the best meal I had in my life because I had another 3-star restaurant.
The French are very honest, aren't they?
Yeah, no, but at another 3-star restaurant in which I tried in Reims, that's called L'Assiette Champenoise. A guy called Arnaud Lallemand, and I told him it's stupid to try and compare. When you reach that level, it's like discussing about Merck's copy and Eno, but this was at that level. Everything, and you could really say the same, I guess, but everything was perfect. Is not the right word. Everything was so carefully prepared, cooked. Every little taste and flavor was out of the ordinary.
The soup was a bit cold.
We should probably just briefly mention what we had. The first course. Well, we went for the 4 surprises, didn't we? And there were a couple of amuse-bouche as well. But the first surprise was a plate of pickled and roasted vegetables with a herb cream. Absolutely delicious. Served on a piece of ceramic work that I think Stacey Snyder would have appreciated. It was almost like a cross section of a tree trunk fashioned from ceramics. Really delicious it was. The fish was a fish from the lake.
Yeah,
so
from the Lake Geneva.
Fish.
Yeah,
and the skin had been kind of rolled and crisped and stuffed with something sweet and salty. It was absolutely sublime. Then came the little piece of chicken with aubergine, or as François called it, chicken with gravy. There was a gravy type sauce. Richard and I then had the cheese as well, which was
a mistake.
Amazing selection of cheeses.
Yeah, it was delicious, but probably also a slight error.
It was a slight error. It was a bit much because the dessert was again another. It's just light, delicate meringue with white chocolate, and then a kind of a sweet salt sauce, wasn't it?
Yeah, as you said, they call it a declination around milk, and it's true. It was very milky or creamy. It tasted of different kind of milk, like a little bit of cheese, a little bit of dairy milk, like you get on your doorstep in the morning. You used to in the old days, and it was sweet, but not too. I mean, absolutely delicious.
But I posted the pictures on Instagram, and a couple of people have said, "Oh yeah, what did you do afterwards? Go for something to eat?" On the implication being that the size of the dishes was very small, and I suppose they were small, but added up over
it's
a couple of hours
the space they give you between each course as well.
Yeah,
you feel like you just have enough, and actually, the cheese pushed me over the edge a little bit.
And the wines were on par. I mean, for wine connoisseurs, and I know there are, and on the listening to the podcast, we started with a white Gros Hermitage by François Villard called Cours de Récré, which was absolutely delicious, and then we moved to Givry for the chicken, and we finished, and we went back to Gros Hermitage for a red, and when we mentioned wine for the dessert, we were told quite rightly that it was better with Rome, and we had a little bit of a Philippine Rome that was absolutely
It was so smooth and sweet and light and delicate, that rum, wasn't it? I mean, not like rum I've ever tasted before. I mean, we've probably done about 5 minutes on the
sorry about
food,
this, anyone who's not interested. But
coming back to cycling,
it was an experience.
Oh, yeah. I talked to the chef this morning, and he's actually from a biathlon international, he was in the French team for biathlon, so a very fit guy. And he said he had gone the day before the stage to the Col de la Loze. He'd ridden Col de la Loze and La Madeleine and told me, well, Col de la Loze is not so hard as it seems. I went up, easily. I mean, well, there you are.
Wow. Well, anyway, stage 18, still in the Alps, from Méribel to La Roche-sur-Foron. The jokers on the internet were saying that the neutralised section was my kind of course, as it was all the way downhill from Méribel.
You might have won the neutralised section.
Yeah. What, a neutralised section that goes downhill?
Neutralised
really
section jersey. What would that look like?
Really is my kind of cycling. Yeah. And it was one of those Alpine days where it would take about 10 minutes to name all the riders that were in the first move. I mean, the story of the day, of course, is that Ineos-Grenadiers took a 1-2. It was reminiscent of Hinault and Le Monde at Alpe d'Huez in 1986, the way they crossed the line, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess in a way it was. I'm trying to think of other occasions when that's happened.
There was, I kind of looked it up. I might have missed a couple. It happened in bunch sprints with Cavendish and Renshaw on the Champs-Élysées once. They do 1 and 2. But I mean, it's different.
Really,
and there was another case with the Sonia Duval riders, when Pierre Poli won and was disqualified. So we'd better forget about this. But I think that
was Pierre Poli, and who else? They were away with Frank Schleck, I think, weren't they?
Juan Jose Cobo?
Yeah, it was Cobo.
Cobo.
I think you're right. Absolutely.
2008, I think.
Yeah.
No, this was totally different. I mean, Richard Carapaz and Michał Kwiatkowski did a 2-up time trial for 27k from the finish.
But what would have happened had Mark Hirschi not crashed, because he was going extremely well. He might well have come to the finish with them. I think one of the Ineos riders would still have won, but it wouldn't have been the same finish. Or
if Pello Bilbao of Bahrain-McLaren had not cracked on the climb and been dropped, which was that was what enabled the two Ineos-Grenadiers to march away from the rest. Hey, Kwiatkowski, the former world champion. I don't know why you're raising your eyebrows at that. The former world champion, of course, his first Grand Tour stage win and first Tour de France stage win, of course, makes him the 10th first-time Tour de France stage winner of this race in 18 days. Quite a remarkable stat. The others being Lutsenko, Peters, Pogacar, Bennett, Hirschi, Martinez, Anderson, Kamna and Lopez. It's quite a list, that. Of Crow Anderson, yeah. Quite a list of first-time stage winners there. Carapaz's consolation was that he is now in the King of the Mountains jersey, and that battle is now red hot because he's only 2 points ahead of Pogacar, who, Bradley Thordarson, one of our listeners, said he was Tadej Polkachar.
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
So 2 points separate Carapaz and Pogacar. Roglic is another few points back, and Mark Hirschi, who scored a lot of points today.
How many points on offer up for grabs until the end of the Tour?
Well, that's the thing. There are now 2 fourth category climbs left, one tomorrow and one on Sunday, offering a point each. So it's going to come down to the Planche des Belles Filles time trial, where there are 10, 8, 6, 4, 2 and 1 on offer to the fastest riders on the climb, not the stage winner. So you've got to say advantage Carapaz in that, because he's not going for the overall. He can take it easy on the flat and then really
toddle along the flat bit, sprint up the climb.
Focus on the climb, whereas Pogacar and Roglic both have to race the whole stage for the GC. Anyway, lots more happened today. It wasn't just about the two Ineos riders at the front. Rigoberto Urán was dropped again today. There was a Mikel Landa attack. Richie Porte punctured on the gravel on the top of the Plateau de Glières, and he had to fight back for quite a long time after changing a bike, but he did really well to ride back into the group, and he holds on to 4th place overall. Roglic probably looked the strongest on the gravelly section, but there's a bit of a shake-up on the overall because Landa has moved up to 5th, Enrique Mas has moved up to 6th, and Adam Yates, who has also dropped, and Rigoberto Urán dropped down a couple of places. In the green jersey competition, Sam Bennett has really turned the screw because he won the intermediate sprint and now leads Peter Sagan by 52 points and Matteo Trentin by 63. And tomorrow's stage, we think, will be a break and a sprint finish perhaps. And then it's the time trial on La Planche de Belfi on Saturday.
You are listening to the Cycling Podcast, brought to you by iWalker. Flexible loans built for small businesses. Join 50,000 customers taking on life's twists and turns and scaling new heights with iWalker. If you run a small business, find out more at iWalker.co.uk. iWoca.co.uk.
Thank you very much to iWalker, our title sponsor. Grateful to them as ever for their support. And if you run a small business, go to iWalker.co.uk to find out a bit more about the finance that they can offer you. Well, today was the last big climbing stage, if we exclude Saturday's time trial. Tadej Pogačar said that he needed really to take some time, even a few seconds, from Primoz Roglic today, and he wasn't able to do that. Never really looked like doing that. Roglic, in fact, looked really strong and has looked really strong the last couple of days, but today at one point on the gravel section he rode away from everybody. He looked like he was very much in control, and I suppose the only real drama that happened there was Richie Porte puncturing, and it was a moment that had been very hard up that climb. Again, Mikel Landa, Bahrain-McLaren, they tried a different strategy today. They had Pello Bilbao up the road, they had Damiano Caruso up the road, and Mikel Landa attacked on the climb and got 20-30 seconds. Didn't look like he was going to ride away, and Jumbo-Visma were keeping a pretty steady tempo behind him, and there was no real panic there at all, but it made it very hard, and it meant that a lot of guys were dropped, including Uran and Yates. And then going over the top, because of those splits, when that group reached the gravel section, there were no team cars behind them. And Richie Porte, when he punctured, had to wait quite a long time to get a spare wheel, and did a great ride actually to get back on.
Yeah, which shows the strengths of Richie Porte in this Tour de France in the climbs. He's been really up there in the 3, 4, 5 best climbers in the Tour de France, and it's nice to see him back at that level. And about Landa, I said yesterday, I know there's been a big debate about the McLaren's tactics, and maybe showing their plan to bluntly yesterday when they led the way, and I kind of suggested yesterday that it's better to keep in hiding and attack. Well, it seems to be the case today. The Bahrain-McLaren riders were a lot more discreet, and when Landa attacked, well, nobody really tried to counter-attack. It was probably the best tactics than yesterday's.
What about the stage win, though, for Ineos? Because it was a consolation prize in the grand scheme of things, wasn't it? But they pulled it off very well. Richard Carapaz looked great yesterday, but the pair of them, Kwiatkowski and Carapaz, worked very well together. And as they came into the finish, I don't know what you guys thought, but did you have an inkling of how they might sort it out between them? I wondered. I mean, they kind of did cross the line side by side, arms round one another at one point, slaps on the back. It wasn't quite a dead heat. Kwiatkowski was clearly just ahead of Carapaz, but no debate about the order over the line.
They seem to be saying that Carapaz did a deal with Kwiatkowski, that if Kwiatkowski helps him try and win the polka dot jersey, then he could have the stage win. Today you can argue that the stage win is a kind of long service reward for Kwiatkowski, who's been a really important part of the team at Sky, Team Ineos team when they've won the Tour de France. And he's never won a stage in a Grand Tour, as you said, Lionel. It was also interesting to hear Mark Hirschi say after the stage that Kwiatkowski in particular had been really strong in the break, and that he was clearly at that point working for Carapaz, I think, to get the polka dot jersey, but also to stay away and maybe help him win the stage. And that changed when Hirschi crashed. I mean, Hirschi's crash really changed everything. It left the two of them out front. But as I said earlier, I do wonder what might have happened had he not crashed, because he looked as, the equal of them, really.
A couple of days ago, We mentioned that Team Ineos would now be going for stage wins. And I think I mentioned, or one of us did mention, Kwiatkowski had been the best chance of a stage win. And I don't know if there's been a plan. Well, they both said, Carapaz and Kwiatkowski, that they'd agreed that the polka dot was for Carapaz, and then the stage win should be to Kwiatkowski. But I think that even if there had not been an agreement between them, and if the team car had said, well, guys, battle it out between yourself, I really can't see Carapaz beating Kwiatkowski in a sprint finish between the two of them. In a way, you would have liked both of them to win, because Carapaz has been on the attack every day for the past 3 days, came second twice now, so maybe he'll regret it, as you say, a long time. In the future, if maybe he won't have another chance to win a Tour de France stage, and who knows, maybe lose the polka dot jersey in La Planche de Belfier, which would be dreadful for him. But for me, the real lesson of this stage is when you hear talking about the end of an era or the end of a team for Team Ineos, look at the riders they've got. Once these guys are not there to play their teammates' role, they're just among the best riders in the world. And Kwiatkowski, can you imagine that this guy, with the former world champion, won many races, he was even considered one stage to be a potential GC contender. Can you imagine that this guy had never won a Grand Tour stage? It's an anomaly that's been corrected today.
Well, it hasn't won a race for 2 years. The last race win was at the Tour of Poland 2018.
Fading force. But I heard suggestions that they should race it out between them, have a fair race. As you say, François, I suspect Kwiatkowski would have won that. But you couldn't have that. That's not how teams work. it would lead to a very odd kind of atmosphere at the dinner table. I imagine. I think there was the way that they did it was really quite moving. I think people found it quite moving. That's what cycling is, a team sport. We heard Richard Plug on our Kilometre Zero this morning saying that it's a team sport, and for these two guys to be away and fighting out the stage win for themselves, that in itself was a very special moment, I suppose, for them. Yeah,
but when you hear teams like Mitchelton Scott say at the start of the Tour de France, and many teams do that. Oh no, we're only in this Grand Tour for stage wins. You tend to think, well, if Team Ineos went into a Grand Tour one day with this aim, in cycling, win stages, they would win quite a few, because they've got the tools to do that.
Chute à l'arrière du peloton, cycling podcast team car at the back of the pack, please.
Our Tour de France coverage is sponsored by the next generation Wattbike Atom.
That's right, Richard. We've talked in previous episodes about the Wattbike Hub app, which you can download onto your phone and then pair up with the Wattbike Atom. And it's got loads of training plans, test sessions and workouts on it. And it means that you can, if you want, use the Wattbike without signing up to another service. It's basically, as I've said before, a coach in your pocket. And there's loads of different sessions to suit whatever kind of objective you have. Very popular, particularly during the lockdown for people, was the high intensity interval training sessions, which is where you basically do a series of high intensity fast sprints, but you can also work on your endurance, your speed, and your just basic cycling technique as well, with the polar view and the pedaling effectiveness score system, which we'll talk about in a future episode. One of the things I've quite enjoyed on the Hub app is the ability to kind of just get into a groove and simulate some of the climbs from the world of cycling. There's also some sessions that have been designed by sports people from other sports, which kind of give an insight into the sort of training that they do. So really there's no need to necessarily jump in and get another app on your phone. If you want to just use the Wattbike Hub app, you can do so.
Well, the next generation Wattbike Atom is now available to buy from £90 per month. See wattbike.com. That's wattbike.com for more information. Well, we said earlier that it was another successful day for Primoz Roglic on his march to the win in Paris on Sunday. But a little knock to Jumbo-Visma tonight. Their DS, Marijn Zeeman, who's coach as well, and a very important person in that team. Really, the guy that works most closely with the riders, has been kicked off the race. He seems to have had some kind of altercation with UCI officials after yesterday's finish, who were checking the bikes. There seems to have been some argument, broke out, and he's been expelled from the race, which is quite unusual, and quite a big fine as well, 2,000 Swiss francs, intimidation and aggressive behaviour towards officials. I don't think that's going to disrupt Roglic and Jumbo-Visma too much, but it's not great. It's not a great look, is it, to have one of your really key members of staff sent home from the race for getting in a fight? And quite surprising news, but we'll find out more about it, I guess, as time goes on. As far as the racing went, Roglic he's not faded as he did at the Giro last year. He's looked stronger and stronger, even as his teammates were shed today. Roglic, he never looked in any trouble at all, and I actually thought Pogačar was looking in a little bit of trouble on the gravel roads, but he wasn't. If he was thinking about attacking, he was certainly sitting far too far back for that. Shall we hear from Sepp Kuss, who had another very good day today? A few of us spoke to him at the finish, young American, of course, who's the last man for Roglic in the mountains and often sits behind him on the climbs, but he's always there when it gets really hard. I learned as well two things. One, that he has Slovenian grandparents, and they've got he says he eats Slovenian pastries at Christmas time, and he went back to Slovenia when he was 12. And also that he's going to the Vuelta, and he hinted that Tom Dumoulin would be going to the Vuelta as well, which is interesting, I think. Very strong team shaping up for them there as well. So here was Sepp Kuss at the finish today.
Oh, it feels good. My director was joking with me the other day that this is the last day of the tour for me. But no, we still have to stay really focused tomorrow. You never know what'll happen, and then we'll wait and see for the time trial. But we're confident and feeling good. Not harder than yesterday. It was more steady. The gravel section was really brutal. I mean, your legs are already pretty dead, and then you have to work your way over the really rough gravel. So it was a hard moment. Wout was already George and Wout were riding a pretty hard pace already. So yeah, we could see him in front of us the whole time, and we just rode within ourselves really. This third week has been really tough, but for me personally, I've felt better and better every stage, and especially in the third week, I've felt better than in the third week or the first week. So that's encouraging. I mean, the whole team has just been amazing. So it forces you to step up in level when everybody is riding so well. Pogačar was already the main rival. We didn't concentrate on too many other guys, really. I think he's shown that he's the most attacking rider, and him and Lopez have the most guts to go for it. So it's the toughest to control. I mean, the race isn't over yet, and it's such a long and hard time trial that anything can happen. But I mean, Primoz is one of the best TTers, especially on a course like that in the world. So for sure he's confident, and he hasn't used too many bullets yet this tour. So he's really been really level. He's really good at measuring his effort, and he knows himself really well. And he's a smart bike racer.
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing about Roglic, commanding win. Well, he's not won yet, but I mean, he's really close to doing that. Was that? Remember the first week of the tour, he was saying, he's holding back, or maybe Jumbo-Visma holding back, and we were, in a way, criticizing the fact that there was no clear attacks by Roglic to win a stage. He won one in Roche-sur-Yoron, but we had the impression he was, they were not crushing the opposition the way Team Sky would have done in the past. But look at the third week, who's the freshest of the leading contenders? Well, obviously not Pogačar, who in the last couple of days has kind of waned a little bit. So where the way they handle this 3 week race and kept the energy that needed to win a 3-week Grand Tour was absolutely perfect. And my impression is that the plan was perfectly executed. And as you said, in the gravel section to the Plateau de Glières, it didn't have to lead the way, and there was nothing to gain from it. It just showed the rest of the field, well, I'm the boss.
Yeah, we're not anticipating that Tadej Pogačar is going to claw back 57 seconds in the time trial on La Planche de Belfi, are we? I don't think that's very likely. So barring disaster for Roglic, I think the Tour de France is his. Whether Lopez can close in on Pogačar and pinch second place, don't know. That will be interesting. I mean, that's a kind of live battle, isn't it, I think? Richie Porte probably, I think, a bit too far off third place. He might have a fight on his hands holding off Mikel Landa, who's now only 22 seconds behind.
You reckon? I don't. In the time trial, Richie Porte against Mikel Landa.
On the climb, though.
Still.
Do you think that Porte's going to have such a lead at the bottom of the climb?
I think he's got also.
He could freewheel up.
But he's pretty good at climbing as well, Richie
Well,
Porte.
of course he is, yeah, I know. But
I think this stage is almost kind of made for Richie Porte in a way. I mean, this is the sort of thing he's very, very good at. If he was, a little bit closer, I even think he could take a minute on Lopez. I think the battles for the podium, actually, I mean, Roglic and Pogačar are pretty safe in first and second. I think Lopez could be slightly vulnerable to Porte. I mean, it's we've seen Lopez really fall apart in time trials at times, or he can sometimes put in a decent one, but he's not super reliable in any kind of time trial.
Do you not think that the climb aspect of it will help him, though?
Quite a lot of flat, though, before they reach the climb.
There is, yeah.
And it's a sort of effort, I suppose. It's the mentality required for time trialing, whether it's climb or flat road. That's where Lopez seems to be potentially vulnerable. But when you're riding for the podium of the Tour, maybe it'll be different.
I agree with Richard there. The Richie Porte is a great time trialist on the flat. Showed that he climbed better than most and better than almost everyone on this Tour de France. Remember the number of times he won Paris-Nice on the Col d'Est time trial. I think I agree with that. I think we should watch out for Richie Porte, and he's a good chance. Incident, but barring an incident, then he's quite capable of puncturing, even mechanical or anything. But apart from that, I think we should see a good Richie Porte in La Planche de Belfi.
The Cycling Podcast is supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport, fueled by science.
Thank you very much to Science and Sport for their support of the Cycling Podcast. You can get 25% off all your Science and Sport products, your bars, your gels, your drinks at scienceinsport.com with the code SISCP25.
Are you sure?
Well, that's what I heard you say last night, François. So I'm pretty sure. Lionel's been punching the air and acting all smug because he reckons that Lopez is going to smash Richie Porte in the time trial on Saturday.
That wasn't what I said.
No, you said that the record actually.
Career head-to-head in time trials is Lopez 3, Porte 0.
Yeah, I think 2 of those were in the Vuelta though, and Richie Porte.
Okay.
Was
fine,
just a tourist. I mean, Richie Porte's attitude to the Vuelta is very similar to yours, Lionel. It's a holiday Grand Tour.
But as you say, there's not really many previous time trials that you can compare to the La Planche de Belfi one. We say flat, quite a lot of flat. Not really. I mean, it's flattish to start with, and then it starts rising. There's a little climb, and then there's a proper climb up to La Planche de Belfi. It's going to be a test for the climbers. It really is.
Yeah, and it's a proper climb, isn't it? I mean, it's for Richie Porte, it's several Willunga hills, isn't it, mate?
It is.
And
how many Willunga hills is it? Willunga Hill.
Willunga Hill. Well, we'll have to make a calculation of that, I think. But I would fancy Richie Porte for it. Whether he can chip away a minute and a half, that's a whole other question. That would need, I think, Miguel Angel Lopez to really fall apart, which might happen. But it's still within. It's just within his grasp, maybe. Who knows? We'll find out. Could be very wrong indeed. So what we're looking forward to tomorrow, I mean, it feels almost like a return to the old tours, because the last few have all finished with back-to-back mountain stages before we get to Paris, this is a bit different. This feels like going back in time a bit, almost a Jean-Marie Leblanc tour.
Let's not exaggerate. I mean, the back-to-back mountain stages, we had this almost for the whole tour. We had mountain stages on day 2, we had mountain stages in Montégoire and Puy-Marie,
but
all over the place.
Tomorrow's stage is quite unusual.
Well, no, it's unusual. It's a bunch sprint stage.
Reminds me of 2017 when on the final Friday there was a stage, the Salon de Provence, which Edvald Bosenhagen won ahead of Nikias Arndt and Jens Kukelaer.
Well, okay then, a whole 3 years since we've had a stage like this.
Sure, but I mean, this result is interesting because it showed, this kind of stages, the sprint stages at the end of the Tour de France, very often doesn't crown the same sprinters as in the early stages. I mean, Sam Bennett has been working so hard to win the green jerseys. Done now. Maybe left a little bit too much of energy there to be in contention for a bunch sprint at equal level after 3 weeks of the Tour. Caleb Ewan, we don't know. He's been reasonably within the Gruppetto. How does it feel? How does he feel now? He showed last year that he had enough kick to maybe be the favorite tomorrow. But there are also, you mentioned Mats Pedersen yesterday, guys who've been quite not holding back, but who've not been contenders in sprints in the first or second week, who might become contenders now. So it'll be if
Pedersen fancies Sunday on the Champs-Elysees, his last race in the rainbow jersey.
Yeah, that's right. If that's if there's really a bunch sprint tomorrow, we might see You mentioned Bosenhagen, another type of sprinters. One of them, who was probably tired as everybody else, but energy left in his legs, as we showed recently, is probably Wout van Aert again.
10 teams have got a stage win in this Tour de France, leaving 11 still searching for something, and obviously only 3 opportunities now, possibly a break, but more likely a sprint tomorrow. Then you've got to imagine that the time trial will go to one of the top 4, 5, 6 riders on GC, and then the Champs-Elysees, which is a pure sprint. So chances are few and far between for the likes of CCC, maybe Cofidis, maybe NTT Pro Cycling, and Ardiris Ryan Gibbons.
Well, you mentioned that Edvald Bosenhagen won this equivalent stage a few years ago. He rides for NTT, of course. So does Ryan Gibbons, and we've been following his progress through his audio diary. He's had a tough time starting the race with a broken rib, and he's not had the easiest of debut tours, but he seems to be feeling better and coming into a bit of form. Here's his audio diary from this evening.
Today was stage 18 of the Tour de France. Last 3 days have been rather tough in the mountains. Each day consisting of, I think, Tuesday stage 16 was 3,500 meters to climbing. Yesterday was 4,200, and today was 4,500 meters. Brutal days yesterday and today. Fortunately, I am feeling slightly better from my ribs, so I actually felt a lot better than I did in the previous weeks. So there was no real stress or doubt for me, really. Quite funny. I think, generally in a Grand Tour you get kind of weaker and weaker and more fatigued, and you see the guys struggling more and more. But starting with an injury, the only way to go is up. So I actually, feeling quite alright. Got through the last 3 days in decent shape. So I'm very much looking forward to tomorrow's stage as well as the Champs-Elysees. I think tomorrow could go one of many ways. It's a last opportunity for the breakaways. I think GC's pretty much settled until the time trial. And then it's going to be interesting to see what the sprinters teams do, if they're going to control or what. So very much looking forward to tomorrow. Like I said, feeling a little bit better, which is great. But ready to go give it all I've got, I haven't really been present here. I've been pretty much a bunch filler. So it will be good to actually actively take part in the next stage. But looking forward to seeing what we can do.
I secretly fancy Luka Mesjek to win tomorrow because it would mean, he came close. He was second the other day. It would just because it would be the stage win that Mitchelton Scott said they were coming on the Tour de France for, and secondly because it would be the third stage win another stage win by a third rider for Slovenia, and this time in a bunch sprint, which would be amazing as such.
Before we go tonight, a little reminder that we are presenting a Pedler de Charme mug made by Stacey Snyder to our overall Pedler de Charme at the Tour de France. I put out an appeal today on social media for nominations, and they came in thick and fast. Quite a lot of nominations for Sam Bennett, Mark Hirschi, Sam Bennett and Caleb Ewan as a duo. Who else did we see, Lionel? What other names did we see in the nominations? Tom Dumoulin, Julien Alaphilippe, Richard Carapaz for his efforts. Wout van Aert,
Mark Hirschi,
Pavel Sivakov. People have been enjoying his audio diaries. All of our audio diaries will actually receive beautiful cups from Stacey Snyder. Daniel Oss is another suggestion. Nicholas Roche. Someone suggested best hair, Daniel Oss. Luxury beard, Jérôme Cousin. Best mispronunciation of Pogacar, Sean Kelly. Matt White there's a lot of contenders for that actually. Best smiley team, Sunweb. Best stoic, Dave Brailsford. Best horrendous driving, ambulance driver for Jungel's incident. Best tweet, Thomas de Gent trying to sell his legs. So lots of nominations. No idea how we'll choose a winner. Egan Bernal is another one, actually.
Yeah, I would vote for Greg Van Avermaet, if only for the
You vote for him every year.
Yeah, I know, but this time because of the video clip, you know.
Van Avermaet.
That's it.
Send us your nominations.
You mentioned the Thomas de Gent tweet. That was because he was trying to get in the breaks the last couple of days. And I think it was this morning, wasn't it? Caleb Ewan tweeted him to say, think of me when you're up the road in the break.
No,
and
it was not that. He said, Caleb Ewan tweeted saying, it'll be another hard day for me. Have a thought for me.
Keep me in your thoughts.
That's right.
And Thomas de Gent said, I will retweet it and reply, I will, you know. And he didn't actually, because
he went on social media.
He went up the road.
De Gent. Any other business? Today's Kilometre Zero was called They Were All Yellow, which was a little. We were singing the Coldplay song Yellow at breakfast this morning, as we often do, weren't we, Lionel? And that title just came to us from that song. So there we go. That is a look at Jumbo-Visma, and there's an interview in there with Richard Plug and Sepp Kuss again. Dave Brailsford, Matt White, Dan Martin and Rod Ellingworth are all in that episode too, looking at that team and where they are now on the verge of winning the Tour de France. Tomorrow's episode is one where we sort of look at the Black Lives Matter movement as it applies to cycling. We've got into Kevin Reza, the only black rider in the race, and a few other people as well with some interesting things to say on the issue of, I suppose, diversity. The Tour de France, as we're often being told, is an overwhelmingly white event, and why is that, and what can be done to change that? We've spoken to a few people, and that's tomorrow's episode of Kilometre Zero, powered by Zwift. Before we go tonight, some thanks to friends of the podcast, and if you want to sign up as a friend of the podcast, go to thecyclingpodcast.com. You will get exclusive episodes. I think we will put together all the audio diaries for friends of the podcast. We're still getting lots of entries coming in from our diarists, so we'll put it all together and release that sometime very soon. But for me, thanks to the following who signed up as friends of the podcast: Kerry O'Donoghue, Mr. Jake Mumford, Adam Johnson, Daniel Hans, Kevin Lee, and Martin Gibbs.
And from me to Jasper Treadgold, Malcolm Jackson, Simon Young, Matthew Fuster, Tim Dulhunty, and Roger Whittle.
And a great thanks to Sam Heitzman, Simon Walton, Oliver Otto, Timothy Eustace, Paul Jordan, and Robin Stafford.